Hi, thank you for joining me. Nova's over here with me. I just wanted to jump on here because recently I've been hearing a lot of feedback, and it's not a new thing. It's something that I've heard for the last 30 years of teaching, but it seems to be coming up more and more, especially when I post things like horse memes or scenarios that perhaps are based on a bit of truth, even if we all can laugh about them. But how many times are we doing things in the interaction with the horse where we are working around the horse, looking to avoid potential conflict with the horse, doing things in a patterned manner so that the horse knows exactly what to expect and when to expect it? And how much of our energy are we putting towards hoping things work out or trying to avoid conflict rather than stopping and saying, what are the potential pieces that we might be missing in the interaction that is causing this, I'm going to say, gray area within us? So do we understand what we're doing when we are communicating with our horse? Do we break things down in a specific manner? Are we prioritizing checking in with the horse and noticing through his body language, through his breathing, through his energy, through his mental focus, what his feedback is, and are we actually addressing it, or are we just sort of masking it and going on because we had a certain agenda? And I find a lot of training approaches, a lot of, I'm going to say, traditional lessons focus on task accomplishment, and they don't really look at quality. And so sometimes it's uncomfortable because even if we are trying to learn and trying to get better and trying to practice, we're not getting the support that we need to recognize the places where we might have to slow down and segment our own understanding, breaking down how do we ask, what do we ask, why do we ask something of the horse, and then how do we interpret the horse's feedback. And this is a crucial part, because if we are not acknowledging what the horse is responding with in our short, specific communication, then we are just being hopeful. And if we are just hopeful, then moments can quickly become overwhelming where we go, well, why did my horse spook all of a sudden? Or why did my horse, suddenly do whatever, X, Y, and Z? And we feel like we're constantly being caught off guard. And the more that happens, the less confident we are, the more passive we are, the earlier in the interaction the horse winds up taking over. So I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to think about what are all the places where, as that plastic bag is blowing by as you're about to head out on the ride, that you just stand passively holding your breath, hoping that your horse doesn't see it or acknowledge it and that you'll be fine afterwards. How often do you go somewhere new but you have to have the buddy horse in order for your horse to seem to do okay? Or if you go out on the trail ride, that your horse has to be in a certain position, or if you ride your horse, it has to be within certain time frames so that it doesn't interfere with the potential of feeding time, or just all of these things that actually are often taught to new people and people who are experienced with horses in order to try and avoid conflict. And the whole part of this that gets me really frustrated is that so much of the time that we spend our energy trying to avoid conflict, we're actually teaching the horse all of the unwanted responses that we don't want the horse to have, and we just don't realize it. So if we don't step back and if we don't learn to break down in understanding how one moment influences the next, and that those all of a sudden moments are a compilation of a whole bunch of things that have gone on, usually not within, a 5-minute time frame of when it's actually coming undone with your horse, but often it can be, days, weeks, months, years of buildup that's been going on, where basically, because of a lack of clarity from humans and how they're communicating, or the chaos in which they communicate with that leaves the horse in a constantly defensive state, he's learning to fend for himself, because the horse's only goal is to be safe. Whether he's in a herd or whether he's with humans, his only priority is to find safety. And so if every time the human interaction is creating an unsafe feeling, he becomes more and more defensive. This is where so many times, people tell me, my horse is so great, the only thing you can't do is tie him because he might pull back. And I go, red flag. This is like foundational issue in the horse's education and how he feels about pressure. So even though he may tolerate a rider, and he may tolerate being tacked up, and he may tolerate getting in a trailer, if you are constantly, especially with these older horses, if you are constantly looking to avoid the potential of the horse pulling back, you are completely missing how that horse feels about pressure. And I'm talking spatially and physically. And if it's not addressed now, what is the quality of all of the other interactions you have? Because everything we do with that horse is communicating through pressure, whether it's physical or spatial or once in a while vocal. So there are things where people look at it and they go, well, it's just about the pulling back. And I'm going, no, it's about all aspects of interaction with your horse. And if you don't address it now, it's not a matter of him not having a problem because you're masking it or because you're avoiding it by not tying or doing, all these other things. It's a matter of when the blow up's going to come. And if you are continuously asking more of him using pressure to communicate, which is how we do things with horses. And when I say pressure, I don't mean like aggressively chasing or attacking the horse. I mean every single thing we do in our interaction, whether it's spatial or physically touching the horse, is pressure. So if one of the fundamental tools in which we're using to communicate with the horse is pressure, and from day one, or from a bad experience, or from a lack of preparation, when the human first tied the horse, they didn't prepare him by addressing how that horse felt about pressure, then what is everything else in our interaction, and what is it based upon? It's based upon a horse being defensive. So how much try, how much tolerance, how much willingness, how much curiosity is that horse going to maintain as the training continues? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining me.